Do that over again. Hello, everybody. It's Dale Walsh, the poetic warrior from the Mental Health Warriors. Welcome to Straight, Sane, and Sober. Today, our guest is Lori Corpenos, and she's a practitioner of the three principles, which we're going to go into. It's a movement that's been existent for 50 years and aims to change the face of psychotherapy and psychiatry, and it is slowly, but today I'm going to start a new tradition at Straight, Sane, and Sober, since I am the poetic warrior, by reading one of my latest poems. So, welcome, and I hope you enjoy this poem. It's called "Quantum Leap Life is Making." These are the times transforming the entire earth, where every person finds their true worth, and the old paradigms are due to fall, even as powers that be try to stall. The great tsunami threatening to drown all creatures who are unwilling to change. The transformation that's going down because realities become very strange. And there's no way to say what will transpire, for now is the era of deep mystery, unprecedented in our history, when mankind tries into one to conspire, since life as we know it will meet its doom, but I'll let it pass in my sacred room. So here's my sacred room, and welcome, Lori. How are you? Let me. Lori is a therapist and a marriage counselor uh, with an impressive background of private practice since 1994. But I'll let you tell that story because you can tell it a lot better than I can, Lori. Welcome.
Sure. Well, I thought maybe a good way to start, Dale, is about how we ran across each other. Yeah? Does that sound good?
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, because I love what you're doing here. And Dale and I met in a breakout room on an online program that a psychiatrist is offering. He's a three principles practitioner and he's a psychiatrist in the Midwest. And Dr. Pettit, who I understand you'll be having him on your program also, and I think that's just
I
wonderful.
hope so.
Yeah, yeah. So the online course, I think we both were in the mind, brain, body, behavior connection, but we never met in that course. And this course was the health of the for the helper, because it's so easy for helpers. And helpers come in many varieties, not just therapists, not just nurses, not just doctors, but parents and teachers and siblings, even. So, and it's so easy to forget our own health if we're busy helping somebody else. So, really, that is what, uh, how should I say, how did I involved? How did I get involved in what we call the Three Principles community, which is now thousands of people around the world that took off from one person's insight, one person's insight in 1973. And that person, as Dale knows, is Sydney Banks. And Sid did not have a medical degree. He had no degrees, in fact. And, you know, sometimes we hear amazing wisdom from children because they don't have a lot of ideas about what's right and what's wrong and which way to go and how to think about life. Well, to me, that was Sid, but also beyond that, Sid had an amazing experience in his own life. that helped him see that his insecurity was not real, that his insecurity was just his thinking. You know, what is insecurity? You can't pick it up. It's not something you can touch. It's just the way we think about ourselves. And that's true for all anything you can put under the umbrella of mental health. Mental health is what everybody, no matter what their label has been, everybody contacts moments of mental well being. Even if you can't remember a time any earlier than or any more recent than when you were, I don't know, 3 or 4, right? I know that there are always times that people just have that sensation, that feeling of, and they don't know that that's what they're looking for. They don't know that that happens in a quiet mind underneath the cacophony of our thinking. It's all the intellectual thinking that gets in the way of just a very quiet, peaceful state of mind. There was a wonderful quote, Dale. I don't know if you ran across this quote by Dr. Jack Pransky, which was, let's see if I can remember it now, right? All we are is peace, love, and happiness, and the ability to think that we're not. How profound is that? That
Right.
that's who we are until we start thinking that there's something wrong with us. Or somebody else tells us that there's something wrong with us, that we need fixing. Now,
Well,
it's not to say that we don't take an exercise class if we know that, wisdom tells us that it's a good idea to walk and get exercise. And, you know, our doctor says, well, you'll build better bones, stronger bones if you do some weightlifting. So you do a little weightlifting, and the same for mental well being. Doctor says, it's good for you to get quiet every so often. You don't have to have a meditation practice, but you can live life more like a meditation. That's possible. And
well,
so much is possible for everybody that we don't always realize. People just don't realize what they have available to them, which becomes available. It kind of bubbles up into their recognition in the quieter moments, in the moments that, we're not fretting about something, that we're not worried about something, that we're not um, beating ourselves up over something we said or did in the past, or worried about something that could happen in the future. It's that moment of clarity, a clear mind when we're just in this moment, not in the past, not into the future. And I know that
if we
go ahead, Dale.
No, I was just going to say, if we could, I think because I think a lot of our audience isn't familiar with the three principles. So, they're saying, well, what are the three principles? And so, if correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, Mr. Banks was a Scottish welder in Canada who basically had like some sort of like revelation about the world uh, what 1973, correct? So in 1973, he got in a argument with a psychologist, and they were arguing about who was more insecure. And the psychologist says, "You aren't Sid. You aren't insecure. You just think you're insecure." And that like stopped him cold. And basically, it was the beginning of like a journey of revelation and discovery. He continued for the rest of his life. But the three principles are universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought. Correct, Lori?
Right, right. That's where I was recalling, we were right on the same exact wavelength because I was recalling our conversation beforehand where you said, well, one of the things that I'd like you to talk about is the three principles because it's new to a lot of people on this show. And, Sid always said that not to listen to his words. You want to hear at a deeper level beyond the word because words conjure images up for us. So the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness, people have different meanings about that. And I like that you prefaced each one with the word universal. Universal meaning that everybody has the power to think. It's not, Sid was not referring to the thoughts that we think, the outcome of utilizing this power. He was referring to the fact that we have the capacity to think. And universal consciousness, everybody is aware of what they think, whether they know it or not. So essentially, we're behaving in life according to what we think. Like you'd have to think, raise your hand before the hand doesn't just go up, you know. And universal mind is, as Sid would describe, it's the source of everything. It's the creative energy of the universe. So I thought, one of Sid's books, The Missing Link, Dale and I were talking about reading this, and I thought I could just read a couple of paragraphs because you really want to hear what Sid has to say. And again, go beyond his words. See in your deeper wisdom what this means for you beyond the meaning of the words. It's tricky because you don't want to use your intellect. You don't want to use, this isn't a course in psychology or it's a spiritual understanding. So here's what Sid says on page 27 of The Missing Link. Mind, consciousness, and thought are the three principles that enable us to acknowledge and respond to existence. They are the basic building blocks, and it is through these three components that all psychological mysteries are unfolded. Mind, consciousness, and thought are spiritual gifts that enable us to see creation and guide us through life.
I think
And
that go on.
say again.
No, I was just going to say I think the crucial word in in that whole passage was spiritual.
Yes.
It's a spiritual gift. It's not like a earthly gift, and it's like a gift that isn't with which every person is endowed. And I know that Sid often talks about the inner wisdom, and how that is like really the basis for reality, whereas everything that we perceive outside of us is an illusion.
Yeah. And how do we know that it's an illusion? Because we've all seen things one way and say we're mad about something or we're disgruntled about an email somebody sent us or something someone said to us, and we get good rest, and the next day we wake up and we think, gee, I'm so glad I did not send the response to that email that I had prepared, and you delete it because your reality changed, because you see it differently. So it's an illusion. The negative viewpoints are an illusion of our state of mind, where our level of consciousness is at that point in time. And our positive feelings and thoughts are also an illusion of coming from where our consciousness is at that point in time. Now, does it make sense to live life more according to our more positive states? That's just common sense that makes sense. The way I think about these three principles is this is what helped me. It's kind of a illustration, I guess. I think of the three principles as a bridge between spiritual, formless energy, the energy of life, of all life, the energy of mind, the creative source. So that bridge of universal mind, thought, and consciousness, they're formless. They're just words describing this bridge that allows us to bring that power, that energy into the form of life. Okay. So it takes thought to be able to create a symphony. It takes thought to be able to create a play on Broadway. It takes thought to be a choreographer, to choreograph, or to be a musician, to write poetry, as you do, Dale, to write lyrics for songs. It takes thought. And that's where we bring in our humanity, our human nature, which also has a spiritual nature. Every human has this deeper spiritual nature that we can depend upon in life, no matter what happens.
Well, the thing, I think one of the first hurdles that I had to get over when I began to like become aware of the three principles is the fact that thought generates not only our thinking but also our beliefs and our feelings. And Carolyn Bennett says in the comments that she says, yes, words are so powerful, but it's the power behind the words that is transmitted through our consciousness.
Words are powerful, and then the meaning that we ascribe to those words, right?
Right.
So you could say
And
the same sentence to three different people, and they would place different meaning on the same exact sentence, and they'd have a different response because of that.
right. Well, well, I've always I've been follow or Sid didn't like to call his the people who are aware of the three principles followers. He called them practitioners, that I think you call yourself. So uh, it's just like since I've been practicing the three principles, I mean it seems like completely simple. There are three components to the universe: thought, universal consciousness, and universal mind. But I believe that Sid said that also that simplicity is spiritual and complexity is the brain or is the physical. And I mean, you spent since 19, 20, what did you say, 36 years studying the principles?
Yeah, I've been
And
around it since my
you
first
knew
SID talk.
Yeah, you knew Sid, and one thing that I really like had trouble digesting was when Sid said we are all swimming in an ocean of mental health, because having come from my own experience of a schizophrenic recovery, uh, I had a lot of difficulty, understanding the concept that our natural state is that of mental health, not mental illness. And you look at the world, and there's so many people diagnosed and everything, and you say, how can you say that we're all mentally healthy? But what I realized was that as Dr. Pettit says, all mental illness is a result of the innocent misuse of thought. And I always found that very profound, because it's sort of implied that, you know, there is no mental illness. It's only the act of thinking that makes mental illness, rather than an actual truth or an actual reality that is mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really something, isn't it? That, you know, it was the first time I ever got a glimpse at what innate health meant. Yeah, we're born healthy. Nobody's born with depression or born with anxiety or born with schizophrenia. You don't see a baby's, or if a baby is hallucinating, we don't bring the baby to the psychiatrist, you know. And they do have little hallucinations. Depending on the age of a baby, they're just seeing shadows. They're not even seeing uh, how we look to them later on. But the main thing that you touched on, Dale, is that um, here's what comes to me is something Sid said, which I absolutely love. He said, in the future, there will be one diagnosis: the misuse of the ability to think. So we all have this incredible ability, like what are those figures called? The power figures in life or in cartoons. We have this
Archetypes?
amazing power. What is it?
Are you talking about archetypes or icons, or I'm not sure
I was
exactly what
just
you're
thinking,
referring
like,
to.
yeah, like, the different cartoons of Marvel, and I don't remember the names of
Right.
them, where they
Superheroes.
talk about your superpower.
Superpowers.
That's what I'm looking for, your superpower. And we have a
Right.
superpower, the superpower to think and to feel what we think, and to know that what we think is not everything, it's not reality, it's our temporary personal reality in the moment that we're thinking what we think.
It's our
And that,
perception to our consciousness. Would you say
like,
that?
say again about
It's,
consciousness is a
it's our
fire
perception. Oh, I'm sorry.
fire truck
It's
or
our
police truck
perception.
going by.
It's our perception through our consciousness, rather than absolute reality. It's what we think reality is, but it's rather our perception of reality rather than reality itself.
Right, right. Universal consciousness gives us the power to be aware. And on a personal level, we are going to be aware of what we think. We're not going to be aware of what somebody else thinks unless they tell us what they're thinking, and even then, what they tell us is going to be filtered through our own
Right.
ideas of what they're saying. Yeah.
Well, one thing that I think is important to point out is that Sid like made a clear distinction between personal thought and universal thought. Universal thought is the power of all creatures, not just humans, but of all creatures, to like perceive and draw conclusions, and that's an individual situation with every creature. But what he meant by universal thought is to say the Platonic ideal of thought, which is from which all other thought comes down, but it's untouchable. And Sid talks about the formless and the form, and he says, well, this is what I understand, is that he says that from the formless, everything that has form comes from the formless, and uh, the formless is like the ideal, and the individual form is a reflection of the ideal, but it's not the ideal.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's so fascinating that there's always more to see about the principles. It never ends. Like, and it sets off um, sets off insights. Insights are amazing because it's like if you break down the word, it's like having a sight from within. Like you see something within yourself. It's you may not be able to articulate it, but there's this like knowing. Like I'll give you an example that just popped in my head. Just last night, I was talking to a client who I only meet with him. Um, we had a couple sessions, but she goes to her therapist. He comes to see me, and he had a beautiful insight. They were doing something that they together that they found very difficult to doing, which was um, cleaning things out of their home. So taking they have three children and taking clothing that uh, no longer fit the kids and putting them in bags and bringing them to uh, a charity. And he used to criticize her in his mind with his own judgment. Like, why can't she just get it together and get these things out of the house already? But what he saw last night was so beautiful, where he realized the reason, like he was listening more to her and less to his own thoughts. He was listening to her. And what he heard was that she had sentimental value to these things. And it made it really hard for her to let go of these things. And all this compassion came out of him. He felt compassion instead of judgment. Isn't that interesting? You know? So I just think it's
Ab-
such a great illustration. There's many of those um, illustrations of how people get out of their own thinking. Like they don't take their own thinking as the all important thing in life. They step back from it. They just see it as thought that changes all the time and they don't hang on to it. And it, it it's not as important as finding a nice feeling in themselves, because in a nice feeling the thinking is going to be that much, at a higher level of consciousness.
right, right. So Sydney Banks wrote 6 books, and we actually I was going to I think the one that's known as the missing link, I think, is like the basic like outline of the 3 principles that he wrote. The other are more novels and philosophical treatises. But I was just thinking, talking about thought and mental illness and mental health and everything. And this is a quote that I came across on page 54 of the missing link, and it goes, "Thought is the missing link between mental sickness and mental health. Thought is also the missing link between happiness and sadness. Your personal mind activates your thoughts and makes them good or bad. You have no control over what others think, but you do have the power to control what you think. Our thoughts are the camera, our eyes are the lens. Put them together, and the picture we see is reality."
Yeah, it's a beautiful passage, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think
Sometimes,
I think that really helped me, like with my paradox that I was talking about mental illness versus mental health, and how Sid was convinced that everybody had an innate and an inherent mental health that could be brought out, but once again, quoting Dr. Padgett, all mental illness is the result of the innocent, that's the crucial word, the innocent misuse of thought, because
Yeah.
the no, nobody wants to think badly, but and everybody is in the position where they are when they are, and consequently, their thoughts like develop from their environment, but actually their thoughts and their reality comes from within. And I see that one of the books you wrote is called "It's an Inside Out World." Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. The yeah. Well, the funny thing about that is that book came to me when I was in the middle of editing the Secret of Love book. So, and I had just said the co-author of The Secret of Love, Christine Heath, and I were editing, for 5 years.
Right.
Obviously, we weren't doing it all the time, like one session a week or so. But at one point, I said to Chris, I'm so glad we have this book under our belt because it's the last book I'm ever writing, Chris. 2 days later, minding my own business, not thinking about anything in particular, and this whole story comes to me. So that became, it's a very small book. It's an inside out world, and it's based on two young girls. They have a teacher who suggests to them that something they think in the United States is viewed so differently in another country. Like the geography teacher said something like that. And one of the girls says, "Well, we should," to the other girl, "we should check this out and use our life as a laboratory, and let's see how the day goes, and then at night we'll speak to each other and see if there are any lessons about this, anything we can learn about this." And sure enough, they have these different things happen to them throughout like the course of a few days, and every single incident you could run through an understanding of the principles and understand it differently. Like one of the girls gets teased for the pants she's wearing on the school bus. One of the kids says to her, "Where'd you get those, in the town dump or something?" And, first she feels bad about it. And then they get together and talk about it at night. And she realizes, well, you know, I think the other girl says to her, "Well, maybe he was just flirting with you."
Right.
There's always a different way to think about something. You can either think the worst or you can think, be creative.
Right.
That's
Right.
also the beauty of what these principles represent, that they help us understand creation out there and also be creative by writing poems like you, Dale, or you know, writing a book that you don't even think about writing. It wasn't on Neither of those books were on my to-do list ever. I never had any interest in writing a book. It just like happened, you know. And when something
Right.
happens, it's like you get a homework assignment from Mind. Okay, I'll do this. It's a good idea. I think it'll help people. Why not?
But
Yeah.
that's another thing, is that the the compassion and the need for caring for other people is like is a basic like substratum of like all of Sid's books, and just the ability to use these principles to improve life, and to not only explain life but also to improve life, not only for the individual but for the collective. And that's one thing I think is very attractive about it.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? I mean, I never heard Sid say, "Go out and help other people." Never, maybe you did. I did not, in his recordings. But that's what happens. Like when I'll speak for myself. When my life improved, when my state of mind improved, when I stopped comparing myself to other people or putting myself down or judging myself, and I saw the psychological innocence in other people. Like you say, innocence. I love the term psychological innocence. Compassion comes out. Like that fellow, the client I told you that I spoke with last night, compassion comes out. It's like an automatic thing. You don't have to try to be compassionate. It's not the same, is it? Trying to be compassionate when you're thinking, why are they doing
Right.
this? Blah, blah, blah. When you got all those thoughts on your mind and you're trying to be compassionate, it, it doesn't work out. But just being grateful for not only what Sid stumbled on himself, but the fact that he had the courage to share it. And, he just had to share it because he saw that it changes people's lives. So, being grateful for that puts you in a position to want to share what you've seen. That's why you do this show, right? Because what you've seen has helped you so much. I mean, your story is amazing, Dale. I I'll just tell whoever's listening that when Dale and I got to talking about, he invited me to do this show. I found myself interviewing him because his background is just amazing. What you've been able to see and pull yourself out of. Wow.
Well,
You know,
we were talking about insight earlier, and that's something that in my coaching business I really try to encourage my clients, the families of schizophrenics, to like not only have insight into their own into their loved one's situation, but also to have insight into their own situation, because I think a lot, most of the people who are caregivers for people with schizophrenia are so like focused on helping their loved one that they lose sight of their own, integrity.
their own well-being. Yes, I would assume that the caregivers of somebody with schizophrenia, the more that they are coming from their health and their wisdom, the better they'll be for that other person, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that
So
was your experience, I would guess, in
well,
your past.
with my own experience, not only of that, but also of the need for insight in order to achieve recovery. Because unless you have an insight into yourself and into your own, like thought process and everything, then you aren't going to be able to recover. But my the motto of my company is recovery is always an option, and I feel that I've sort of sided with Sid on this one, is that everybody, if they can change their thinking, has the potential to potentially change their lives. And but I just like to point out something that came up in the comments. It's from Graham Duvall, and says, "It's what people keep telling us. We need to know clearly what is needed, not what we want. We need to know what is, what not, what is, what not. Think about what we want. Everybody's interpretation of anything are different from each other. So." Uh, it's not what people tell us reality is. It's or what we should do or anything. It's actually, it's up to the individual to figure out what they want themselves. And I was just talking about um, the insights and and Sid's compassion, the result of Sid's teaching is compassion. He um, he starts the missing link with, at the introduction, he says in italics, if these writings bring a second chance of life to just one human being, my work would not have been in vain.
Yeah. Can we go back for a minute to the question or the comment in the comment? I don't see it on my screen, and I wasn't able to really. Can you repeat the comment? Because I'm just wondering if I want to make sure that we're not coming across to people as saying you got to pay attention to yourself and not pay attention to your caregiver or your doctor or something
Right,
like
right.
that. I want to make sure people don't think that.
Okay, so the quote is from Graham Duvall. It's what people keep telling us. We need to know clearly what is needed, not what we want. We need to know what not to think about what we want. Everybody's interpretation of anything is different from each other.
Right. That's true. And, however, how would you answer this, Dale, taking it one step further? What if you decided to come off all your medication all at once without taking, having the wisdom to follow your doctor's orders and say you have to come off medication slowly, little by little, and I'll guide you through that? Because, until people really get a feel for wisdom versus personal thinking, it it could. I don't want to be misunderstood as saying that you should just follow what you think. you know,
Right, right.
wisdom would tell you to check in with your doctor, and they've had many years of medical knowledge. Let the doctor know that. I mean, your story is amazing, Dale. If you could say the difference between how much medication you were on versus, through the years, how you've been able to titrate off. I think that would be really valuable for people to hear.
Well, I agree with you, and you're absolutely right. I mean, every time in the past when I would like just suddenly stop my medication, I would be in the hospital within 2 days to 2 weeks. So that's some in the last 3 years, I've gone from 30 milligrams of my antipsychotic to basically five, and I noticed at five, I felt I was medicated because I was feeling irritable and I was getting in like bad moods about not only with my sister but with other people, and and so I took it by my own choice back up to 10 milligrams a day, and I talked to the doctor today, and I see him in 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about the correct dosage, but you're absolutely right. You have to have the insight and the knowledge of yourself to be able to say, if something's not working, then I have to do something to find that balance again. And as you said, when I would go from 30 milligrams to nothing, within 3 days, uh, because of the chemical imbalance in my brain, I would be back in the hospital, and they would just first thing they would do is raise my medication to a higher level so I could get back the balance with the medication. So I agree completely. There's one. I mean, the thing that got me in trouble this time, down at 5 milligrams, is I basically forgot my desire to be responsible in pursuit of personal autonomy and to get what I want. And sometimes you aren't always going to get what you want. You have to be able to balance and to judge what it is you really need as opposed to what you want, because God will always give you your needs, but uh, that He won't always give you what you want.
Yeah, there's a song like that, right? Can't bring it to mind, but um,
Well, it's the Rolling Stones.
You
You
won't
can't always
always get what you. We get what we need. We don't always get what we want. Something like that. I
right.
can't remember who
Yeah,
sings that.
you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need by the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, uh, so do you have any like particular insights or cases or clients or any stories that you would like to tell about how the three Ps have like influenced your therapeutic history, or is there any that like really stand out in your mind that you would like to share with us?
Oh, sure. That one story from that fellow last night, but there's so many just like that. And those stories are what led to the book, The Secret of Love, because I was finding that as couples, the couples I was working with, as each one of them looked within themselves rather than pointing a finger at the other person, they looked within themselves to see where their thinking was off, where they were relying on their personal thinking rather than what their wisdom. Their relationships changed so much. And it got to the point where I realized, my goodness, these should go in a book. And when I contact Christine, Chris happened to have a tape from, cassette tape, tells you how long ago this was, um, that Sid made, which was called Thought and Marriage. And so we used that audio as uh, quotes from that audio as a springboard for each chapter. And then we would give an example of her clients or my clients. And people from the Three Principles community started hearing that we're doing this. So we got um, people saying, we've got a great story for you from our own life. And that's what I meant about when your life changes, you want to share it. So these are people who are teaching in the community now for years. Like we have a story from um, Dickon Bettinger and his wife, and stories from um, Chris and um, Jan and Chip Chipman, and Elsie and Ken, who recently, when we were writing the book, they had celebrated their 50th anniversary, and there was a point before they heard what Sid was trying to share with them, where they were getting divorced. So, you know, when people start looking inside themselves for how they construe reality, not the details, not getting immersed in, figuring it out. You don't want to do that. You just want to open up to insight and see how your own life changes as a result. It's quite it's magical in many ways. It feels miraculous. So I don't know what story comes to mind in particular. Um, I'm searching for a story that would be around. Oh, here's one that comes to mind. It's a little bit like a caretaker taking care of someone with a mental health label, but it has to do. Do you know Rudy Kennard, who did the Three Principles movies and
Not familiar.
wonderful? Oh, there's so many videos that he took of people talking about how their lives changed. Um, he had an experience with his mom in the hospital who was passing away. It was the end of her life. And when he got together with her, he's in a hospital room and he's like trying to get her to eat better. Maybe she'll, in his mind, and maybe it'll give her a few more years, eat better, stop smoking cigarettes. You're in a hospital room.
Right.
um, and when he finally realized that that was coming from his personal thinking. She was doing how she wanted to spend the last day, the last, you know, portion of her life. He totally gave that up, and they had the best time. in the in the end of her life. It's a beautiful story in The Secret of Love. And the rest of that title is Unlock the Mystery, Unleash the Magic. Because magic happens when people get out of their own way, they get out of their personal thinking. Yeah. So, I
Uh,
mean, Sid had such an incredible legacy for the world in this one insight, this one huge insight that he had about the fact that thought is not life. It's just our momentary view of life. But, most of us go until hearing from Sid or one of his teachers that I know I went through life thinking that my life was what happened to me.
right,
Life happens, but it's how we think about what's happening. It's how we're
right.
interpreting it.
Well,
And if you don't like how you're interpreting it, get it out of your head. Stop thinking about it. And wisdom will bubble up and will show you a healthier way to view it. That reminds me, Dale, of how Sid would talk about our ability to think is like having a rudder for our own ship. We're going through life like a ship going through water, and we can steer into rocks or we can steer into open water. The choice is always ours.
absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, the course we took with Dr. Pettit. One thing that really struck me that he says that historically, a new paradigm takes 50 years to be adopted by general reality. And I think that the reasons that the three principles aren't more well known is because by their very nature, people aren't trying to convert people to the three principles way of thinking, and that's very like counterintuitive to the human instinct, because when someone has like a great idea or anything, the first idea is to try to convert everybody else to that belief, and the practitioners and the people who use the three principles and therapy and everything, they're the exact opposite because they know that everybody has to arrive at their own conclusions. And the three principles is, I remember Sid saying in the missing link about, don't follow anybody. Followers because you're going to be adopting someone else's point of view. So I think that's the reason that the three principles has been such a powerful but silent movement through the psychiatric and so many areas in life because people don't go out of their way to like preach it and proselytize to the three principles practice, but rather they just like present it like a sort of like a puppy on Christmas Day. I mean, here's a puppy and it's yours, and you can watch it grow and you can enjoy it. But ultimately, I'm not going to tell you how to love it. So, but the point about the 50 years is that it's been since 1973 that Sydney had his first revelation. So basically next year 2023 will be 50 years, and uh, I think that the principles really have the potential, and they already are, like transforming the whole psychiatric field from one of behavioral analysis to thought to how thought and how thinking affects the behavior and reality that people live.
Yeah, it's exactly why Sid said, don't listen to my words.
Right.
See it for yourself. See it for yourself. And that's why he said, if you can help one person, that's, that's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah.
And that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, right, right.
So,
Exactly.
well, I think our time is just about up, Lori. But how can people? Hopefully, Adam will be able to put this in the chat. But how can people contact you? Or and oh, and one other thing is you have a book club about with the three principles, right? That
Yeah.
is that open to everybody or?
Yeah, well, it's on my website. So it's called, I call it Mystery School after one of Sid's, Sid would say life is a mystery. He also said it takes the mystery, and the three principles take the mystery out of uh, all psychology. So I call it Mystery School. It's on my website, which is the number three principlestherapy.com. Principles, of course, is plural, PLES. And up on the menu, the first one is Mystery School. People can click on it and read about it. And yeah, it's wonderful because people are there from so many different parts of the world. One of the great things about being able to meet on a screen is, it doesn't have to just be for local people. It could be for people
Right.
from anywhere.
So you
Yeah,
say that that's threeprinciplestherapy.com is your website.
right. That's it.
Well,
And
it's
it's
been a real
basically a,
pleasure.
yeah, go ahead, Tim.
It's been a tremendous pleasure to have you, and thank you for your enlightening thoughts. And I knew that this would be a dynamo, interview because the I mean, besides your own charisma or whatever, your own appeal, that you attractiveness you have, the point in the message of the three principles I feel is more and more necessary in these days of chaos and division that the world is going through. So thank you very much, Lori, for your time and your efforts, and keep up the good work. And as we said, the website is the numeral three principlestherapy.com. So check it out, and I'll see you next week when I'm not sure who my guest is going to be, but we will have an interesting guest. And once again, thank you very much, Lori, for your time and effort, and hope to see
Thank
you
you,
again very
Dale.
soon.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you
well,
for
have a
your
good day.
hard work.
Why, thank you. And uh, I'll just mention the book. The book again is called uh, what's the name of your book again? And it's available at Amazon, right?
Right. The Secret of Love. Unlock the mystery, unleash the magic. I don't have it to show you, but it's a red cover. I guess there's also a book called The Secret of Love that's a romance novel. It's not that one.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
look up the
They people
name.
could
So,
just put my name in Amazon and they'll see the other book also. Yeah.
okay, great. Well, have a good day, everybody, and thank you for attending. And I hope you found this enlightening. And we'll see you next week. And thank you once again, Lori.
Thank you, Dale. Good job.